1059 The Region, covering the most important stories of all. Yours.
Home sweet home. According to the recently released Remax Canadian Housing Market 2025 Outlook, the national average residential price is expected to rise 5%. A seller's market will likely dominate this year, and consumer optimism is on the rise. Joining us now to unpack some of the details of this housing forecast is the president of Remax Canada, Christopher Alexander. Really great to have you on the show. I believe it's the first time.
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me.
So I sense, Christopher, some cautious optimism in your forecast. What are the factors at play that point to a 5% average increase in house prices, nationally speaking?
The biggest story to me for 2025 is the return of the first-time home buyer, who's been essentially blocked out because of rising interest rates, stress tests, and challenging job markets for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Almost 3 years now. And so they're going to be able to return to buying activity this year with all of the new changes, 30-year amortization, a change in the stress test, plus insured mortgages are now up to $1.5 million. And that should give enough of them the appetite to get into the market this year, which is exciting.
I read your report from cover to cover. I, like so many Canadians, fascinated by things that go on in real estate. But I noticed that there were quite a few sellers markets indicated in the number of regions that you discuss. What does that mean to the first-time buyer to be stepping into a seller's market?
Well, typically, you need to be aggressive as a buyer in a seller's market, and that can be challenging for most first-time home buyers. It's the biggest financial decision most of them have made, and it takes a while to get comfortable with the process. And in a seller's market, chances are you're going to be in multiple offer situations. You may lose out on certain bids, and it can be a very frustrating, stressful process. And that's why it's so important to be working with a professional realtor to help you along the way.
Absolutely. So you're expecting a more active market this year, 2025, with sales anticipated to rise in 33 of 37 markets nationwide. What's behind that?
The extra horsepower that first-time home buyers will have is going to trigger activity all the way through the different market segments, move-up buyers, luxury, et cetera. The other thing is decline in interest rates. But we do have some headwinds that are still in the market, and that's where the cautious optimism comes from. Mm-hmm. I mean, our unemployment rate has risen. That usually has a direct correlation to home sales and auto sales and big purchase items. However, I do think that the pent-up demand over the last 3 years is going to carry us through most of that. So I expect that we'll see a lot more activity on the sales side with marginal price increases.
Christopher, there's great uncertainty when it comes to leadership here in this country right now. There also are, speaking of headwinds, Trump tariff threats. Those are things that people in their day-to-day lives, they take very seriously. Could either of those, the uncertainty in leadership and also Trump and his terrible tariff threats, would they have any impact on the confidence when it comes to real estate here in this country?
I think it depends how serious you are in the situation you're in. If you're a speculative buyer or an investor, you may be more cautious than somebody that just had another baby or gotten a divorce or had a loved one or a parent pass away. Like, those are all life events that force a market activity. And so I think, though, if you're a speculator, you'd probably be weighing more on being cautious. However, like I was just saying, real estate is not a commodity. It really felt like it was in the pandemic years, but it's shelter. And I think most Canadians will make decisions based on their immediate needs and wants. And for a lot of them, they've been on the sidelines for a really long time and probably are getting tired of waiting.
60% of Canadians own their home. 43% say home ownership is still out of reach. So we've got, this dichotomy, this push and pull. Where do Canadians stand? Is it still a difficult reach for young Canadians or new Canadians to find home ownership here in this country?
It depends where you are. We definitely have an affordability crisis, and in a lot of ways, we still have a housing crisis. And if you're a first-time home buyer looking to buy a detached home in Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal, you're dreaming.
Yeah,
But
good luck.
you can get into the condo market and start building some equity for a really reasonable price. And I think the idea of home ownership for a lot of Canadians is not realistic. And that's not necessarily wrong. It's just, I think when a lot of people think of a home, they think big backyard, detached, white picket fence, like the dream. But what most people should understand is that it takes a while to get there.
Yeah.
And most people don't buy their dream home right out of the gate. It's, they've bought property, they've built some equity, they've sold, they've moved up, they've paid down their mortgage, which gives them even more power when they go to buy their next property. And so to me, I've just seen this almost a bit of a delusion with the average home buyer in Canada just expecting to be able to buy a big home on a big lot right out of the gate, and that's just not realistic.
I want to mention some standouts. Simcoe County, so that would include places like Collingwood here in southern Ontario. A 25% increase in sales is forecast, and that puts them in a seller's market position. Then we go far east to Truro and Colchester, Nova Scotia. 10% increase in sales, and it will be a seller's market as well. But let's go back to Toronto, 12.5% increase in sales activity, and it puts them in a balanced market. So help me understand this.
Region by region, I mean, Collingwood has been very attractive for a lot of people. I mean, it doesn't even feel like a small town anymore in a lot of respects. And so I see it being very, very desirable. Truro is it's a good hour from Halifax, but Halifax is booming, and it's becoming a bedroom community to the city. And Halifax is still very affordable by Ontario standards. The average sale price is just under $600,000. But Truro, it's a fraction of that. And so if you're an executive or a family that may work in the city, it makes a lot of sense to live in Truro at a fraction of the cost and make the drive in every day. Toronto, you're going to have a lot of transactions at lower price points because that's what's affordable. So that'll bring the average sale price down. And all those condos we were just talking about are also going to bring the averages down and create that balance. But every year we do a report on hot pockets in the GTA, the same marquee neighborhoods year after year, even through the last 3 years, have performed well and gone up in price, and I expect that's going to continue.
Burlington, Hamilton, Peterborough, Kawartha Lakes, Muskoka, Haliburton will be a buyer's market according to the forecast, the outlook. What constitutes a buyer's market?
More than 5 months of available inventory. Now, caveat, when we released this report back in November, the dollar was still relatively strong. And now with its decline and potential further declines, you mentioned Donald Trump, I think the rental market in cottage country this year is going to explode because most Canadians are not going to want to travel south with the weak dollar or abroad, especially to Europe where it's the euro is even stronger than the U.S. dollar. And so I could see a lot of Canadians, like in the pandemic years, opting to vacation closer to home, which will have a good positive effect on those peripheral communities.
Christopher Alexander, president of Remax Canada, you've been at this for a while. You've been in the trenches. You're the top dog at Remax now. Your personal view, one line to tell us what you think 2025 is going to be like in terms of real estate in this nation. More
sales, but slight increase in prices. So slowly but surely, we're going to do better and better.
Access off air using the TuneIn app or by asking your smart speaker. Play 1059 The Region.